Hi everybody, Refresh here, and I'm here to take a look at the Lorehold Legacies Commander Deck for Magic the Gathering from Strixhaven School of Mages. This is the red and white deck. According to the back, it says double your treasure, choose your commander and overcome both friend and foe in this definitive multiplayer Magic format. Team up with Osgir to excavate the secrets of the past and turn them on your opponents. Osgir can make 2 copies of any artifact in your graveyard, turning your trash into twice as much treasure. Lorehold College, Lorehold Mages are passionate scholars obsessed with history. They explore the past by poring over archaeological artifacts, drawing magical energies from ancient tomes, and summoning the spirits of long-dead historical figures. It includes a deck box, 100-card deck with 17 new cards, 10 double-sided token cards, a life wheel, strategy insert, and reference card. Let's go ahead and open this up. We have some punch-out tokens here, and a punch-out placard or something like that. That's the deck box. It's got some Lorehold art, Osgir on the back. Inside we have a Learn to Play Commander. It looks like the text got some damage here, but we have some information about Osgir, as well as 3 of the other characters that you'll find in the deck. And on the back we have rules for how to play Commander, very useful. This is our life wheel, themed for Lorehold. And this is our deck. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. And there's a tip card reminding you of your phases, as well as popular Magic formats. Now that I've seen the deck, I'm going to take it and play it against its peers, and I'll be back to let you know what I think. So I've had a chance to play with this deck a few times, and here are my thoughts. The artifact theme does seem to play out pretty well throughout this deck. Obviously there are some support cards that have nothing to do with artifacts, like Standard Ramp in the Soul Ring, Board Wipes in Route and Cleansing Nova, and a handful of utility lands that just happen to be in color. But most of this deck does actually play to the artifact themes that are suggested by the 2 commanders that come with this deck, Osgir and Alabu. There are a couple cards that are a little bit out of place, and the most egregious of which is Layla, the Blade Reforged. Now this is a legendary card that does fit into the idea of Strixhaven, where Boros becomes Lorehold, and Lorehold is actually more interested in graveyard synergies than the classic aggressive Boros artifact theme. And in that way, Layla doesn't quite fit in this deck, because while there are some Loreholdian graveyard shenanigans, particularly with Osgir, it's not a major theme of the deck, but a very minor theme of the deck. And to have a major rare slot taken by a card that doesn't play that well into the deck's primary artifact theme does feel kind of weird. Most of the deck plays out leaning towards these artifact synergies, so that part is good. The deck is, I think, a little short on ramp, with Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Mycosynth, Wellspring, and Mindstone kind of holding most of the job on the lower end. As you can see, the curve here is very thick on the 3-drops and a little bit less on the 2-drops, and so you may be tempted to search for an earlier ramp card rather than one of these more expensive 3-drop ramps in the Commander Spheres or the Boros Locket or whatever. in order to move into casting some of your top tier beaters. But the deck does offer a bit of value and resilience, and that's particularly because of the face commander, Osgir the Reconstructor, which wants artifacts in your graveyard to be able to use his ability to duplicate the artifacts that are in the graveyard, exiling them and then creating 2 tokens that are copies of them. And sometimes these copies can do some pretty wild things, like duplicating the combustible Gear Hulk, for example. And even on the cheaper end, duplicating the Ichor Wellspring does end up drawing you 2 cards. But Osgir does suffer a little bit in this deck because there are not a lot of ways to mill your own cards into the graveyard or discard them into the graveyard to get the benefit from his second ability. And so oftentimes you're going to have to cast the artifacts onto the battlefield and then use his first ability to get it into the graveyard. Now, sometimes you can get some benefit out of that in addition to the +2/+0, because sacrificing a Ichor Wellspring or a Mycosynth Wellspring will both get you an additional effect. But some of those times you're just going to end up sacrificing something just because you want a little bit more value from that using his second ability. That's where this deck struggles a bit. Now, there's a single Faithless Looting to help you loot some of your artifacts that you want in the graveyard away, but this deck isn't very thick on card draw effects and primarily gets most of its value from additional artifact synergy effects. Alibu as a secondary commander I think is much weaker. I think that Alibu definitely fits a bit more into an aggressive deck, and the deal X, scry X when you attack with artifact creatures sort of requires you to have those artifact creatures. And as you can see from the layout of this deck, it's not really high on low mana cost artifact creatures. In fact, there aren't very many at all. And so getting the additional effect from Alibu's attack trigger doesn't seem to be as consistent. Consequently, I'm very much less inclined to play as Alibu than I am as Osgir with this deck, but that is something to very much keep in mind. Still, overall, I found that this deck was fairly fun to play because the synergy still does remain pretty strong throughout, and you're always wondering which artifact or artifact-based interaction that you want to use to maximize the value and or impact of your deck at any given time. And there are decent options for control and some reasonable finishers as well. And so if you like artifact decks and are looking for something a bit more mid-range and value oriented when it comes to red-white decks, this is a reasonable deck to try out. If you have had a chance to play with this Lorehold deck, let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.